And welcome to the Money Puzzle. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Eric Douglas and Aaron McAndrew of Family Wealth Planning Partners. Eric, how are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
And Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here.
Great. And I'm so glad that we're back together today because obviously you've been so incredibly busy. You're helping people every single day of the week putting their own money puzzle together, because that's obviously the theme of our show. And just wanted to talk to you quickly, Eric, if I can put you on the spot for a moment. How does retirement planning fit into a money puzzle?
Well, the retirement plan is the puzzle. You're always having to, fiddle with it a little bit and make changes, but you always want to find all the different pieces of your portfolio, of your life, of what your goals look like. We want to take all of those different things and put them together for you in a nice, clear picture that you see, but not only see, understand. We want you to be able to understand what your roadmap to retirement looks like in totality.
Thank you, Eric. I know so many people in the viewing audience have questions about that, about how to plan their perfect retirement. The theme of our show today actually is do-it-yourself mistakes, because obviously people can go to the internet right now and they can Google anything. And sometimes, a lot of times, they're getting the wrong information. So Aaron, I'm going to guide this directly to you actually. How can it be an issue if someone is non-diversified in their retirement, if they've heard that they don't have to be? How can that be an issue?
That can become a very good issue, big issue, not good. So I work with a lot of retirement participants, meaning participants in retirement accounts, and a lot of times they are not necessarily forced to do it themselves when they first enroll in the plan. If they don't know or they choose to do something themselves here, they will pick index funds. So they may pick just the S&P 500 and put all their money in the S&P 500, all their contributions or whatnot going into the S&P 500, or they'll pick a couple different index funds. And I've even seen times where there's two different S&P 500 funds in the same portfolio, which is just different fund companies' version of their index fund is all it is.
Wow.
So index funds are great and it can be used, but not just only the index fund in a portfolio, because it's great while the stock market is great, or while the indexes are doing well. When the index starts taking a dip backwards, a lot of times it's the same people that are in those index funds that are wondering, I'm not comfortable losing this much, or I'm not comfortable, with what's happening in my account. And a big, a lot of times they look at what the cost is or the expense on the index funds, and index funds are some of the lowest cost funds that are in these options for retirement plans. So typically see that a lot.
Well, it's also worth noting too, there's so many different indices out there that you can track. So much focus gets paid on the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones. Those are the ones that you hear about the most in financial media. There's all kinds of different indices and all these different index funds that you can track. So if you build a portfolio with 3 different S&P 500 index funds, you're really not well diversified whatsoever. You might have 3 funds, 3 index funds, and they're all 3 low-cost index funds. That's not a diversified portfolio, because if the S&P 500 goes down, all 3 of those funds are going to go down together.
Wow.
That's why you want to track different index funds that track different indices. So you're not totally just tracking one specific index. Another thing that we see is, especially over the last few years where the stock market has been ripping, right? We've had a fantastic couple of years in the stock market since the crash of 2020. So much focus has been put on individual stocks. And some of those stocks have done particularly well. Well, now you look at them, and we're kind of in the middle of a correction.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at certain sectors of the economy, the tech sector specifically is really in a bear market right now.
Wow.
When you look at those specific types of stocks. And if you were so wholly focused on like tech stocks, you're probably not very happy with what your portfolio has done over the last 6 months, to be perfectly honest. That's why you always want to build a well-diversified portfolio, so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Sure. So then picking stocks that represent different things, making it well diversified, not just focusing on one specific area. Okay. Eric, what about trying to time the market? Because so often people Google that, how to time the market. What's your
Yeah.
response to that?
Don't do it.
Okay. I know. Where's the
For
crystal
one,
ball, right?
If you're going to do it, if you're trying to time the market, that really is probably your full-time job, or should be your full-time job, because there's so much information that you have to pay attention to on a daily basis, and so much noise that you have to weed through, and it's really it's fool's gold that you're chasing after. What we see for the most part is individuals thinking, oh, well, everything's kind of going down. We're in the middle of a correction. I need to sell. Well, that's an overreaction on the emotional side.
That makes sense.
Because right now, when most people are selling, that's typically the time for you to be buying.
Yeah.
You know, Warren Buffett was famous for saying, well, when everyone else is selling, I'm going on a shopping spree.
Oh, yeah. Smart.
It's almost really the only time in your life where, you know, you don't go to a store looking for a deal.
Yeah.
Is in the stock market. Every time you go to Target, where do you go? The sale aisle,
Yeah.
right? You try to find things on sale. Stocks are on sale during a correction. But it's weird because emotionally people get scared when stocks are going down and they want to sell, which is the absolute worst thing to do, is trying to time the market, because inevitably what will happen is the market will come back up and you're going to miss the gains that are going to come with that.
Just to add to what Eric mentioned there, some of the biggest mistakes with timing the market is, you know, there's charts out there that will literally show you when we go into a correction or market's down 10%, 15% or whatnot, people start making those mistakes and selling out at the wrong time. They don't have a plan as to, if they're going to sell out, when do we get back in?
Yeah.
So what happens is when they typically get back in is you see a day that the market jumps 4% in one day or 3% in one day, or 2 days in a row that you see it jump really big, and they're like, oh, okay, I feel better about where the market is now. And then what happens is they miss some of the biggest jumps, some of the biggest gains in their portfolio, because they're buying now back in at a different price, and then it could take another dip backwards or something, and they go back in the same cycle over and over again.
I heard a fantastic analogy recently that I think is really appropriate for today's environment where we're in a little bit of a correction. Investing in the stock market is like using a yo-yo walking up a mountain.
Wow.
Okay? When you step back and look at the mountain, you're constantly going up. But if you're only paying attention to the yo-yo as it's going up and down, it's going up and down, but on a long enough trajectory, it's still going up the mountain. It's still increasing in value. I think that's a really good analogy to keep in mind. That, you know, when you start thinking about, you know, worrying too much or getting too overly emotional about these corrections in the market, I think that's a great way to conceptualize the long-term purpose of what investing really does for you.
Absolutely. Well, Aaron, I know that you and Eric have a very special offer to present to the viewers at home today. Why don't we talk about what that is and then open the phone lines? Yeah,
so we're talking today about do-it-yourself mistakes. So, you know, whether people realize they're a mistake or not a mistake, eventually when they do, if there's anything that we're talking about that you're thinking, hey, did I do that or should I do that, or you've got questions, that's what we do. So we're happy to take a look at it. We offer a complimentary retirement plan analysis here. We'll take a look at what you're doing. If you feel like you've made a mistake in there, we'll review the whole portfolio. We'll give you our feedback on it, and then help put it together in an actual plan so that these mistakes don't continue to come up. So give us a call. The number's on the bottom of your screen. One of the hardest things to do is just pick the phone up and make the call. So pick the phone up, make the call. It's 844-900-5210.
Aaron, thank you so much. Eric, thank you so much. To the viewers at home, the phone number to call is on your screen, and that number is 844-900-5210. We know you have a lot of questions for Eric and Aaron about how to put your own money puzzle together. They have the answers for you. Again, that number is 844-900-5210. We're going to take a very short commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some mistakes if you try to do this yourself. Stay tuned.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. This is a $999 value that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review today.
And welcome back to The Money Puzzle. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Eric Douglas and Aaron McAndrew at Family Wealth Planning Partners. I got Aaron and Eric, Aaron and Eric.
Say it 5 times fast, right?
I know, right? It's a tongue twister. Yeah. So staying on the same line of do-it-yourself mistakes, Aaron, I want to ask you about this next one. Obviously, not allocating based on risk. Let's talk about that.
Yep. So one of the first questions that I typically ask someone when I take a look at their portfolio is, well, what's risk tolerance? And they'll say, well, what do you mean? So that follows with a series of other questions that kind of get to that risk tolerance. So a lot of times we'll see people when they first start their career, they'll get into something and they'll get into these funds or whatnot in their retirement plan, and they never make any changes, period, to it, and they get closer to when they're needing to retire. Maybe not right at retirement, but they get closer to that, and they're not it's out of balance. It's not the way. It's a lot more risky than what it was, because as the stock market continues to perform, that makes those other funds worth a lot more of their portfolio holdings. So it doesn't, the allocation's not where it used to, not what it was originally.
Okay.
So, you know, that's the one thing. The other thing is I get a lot of feedback on it is, well, I should be more aggressive. I want to be more aggressive, and that all's great when the markets are good.
Right.
But when we have downturns or corrections, or it starts having a pullback, that's when you typically find out some people who want to be aggressive
They're like, not so much.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another mistake we see as well along that same topic is not necessarily applying different risk profiles to different types of accounts. What I mean by that is, especially as you enter into retirement and you start drawing income from certain accounts, you're not necessarily going to draw income equally or pro rata across all of your different accounts. Think of your retirement plan almost like in buckets.
Okay.
So you're going to draw from bucket 1.
Okay.
And bucket 1 needs to have quite a bit less risk attached to it, because that's income that you're going to need within the next couple of years.
Okay.
Bucket 2 is going to be income that you're going to need really in years 2 to 10, give or take. So you want to take more risk because you want to keep up with things like inflation and get some level of return, but you're also not trying to hit home runs with that bucket.
Okay.
The home runs come in bucket 3. That's your long-term growth strategy. You're not going to need that money for 10 years, so you have the time to weather the volatility in the stock market. So you don't necessarily need to apply the same risk profile to every single account. You can assign different risk profiles based upon when you need to start drawing income from those types of accounts. Another example is if you have an account out here designed specifically for an estate or a legacy play, and you have no intentions of ever drawing money from that, why do you need to be ultra conservative with it?
True.
Invest it like it's going today to your maybe 30-year-old kids.
Okay.
How would they invest it? Because ultimately that's who's going to end up getting it. So things like that need to come into consideration versus just investing the same way across all of your accounts.
Okay.
And I'm going to flip the script here and to add to it a little bit. Originally, we were talking about people being too aggressive initially. There's also the people who are ultra conservative, and when they start, you know, maybe they're 25 years old, 26 years old, start saving for retirement, or even 30-some years old, but they want to be conservative, and they put more money into fixed investments or money that, you know, in places where they don't really want to lose anything. there's a time and a place for that. But when you're using a retirement plan or something for a vehicle, accumulation vehicle, to help grow, and you've got 20, 30 years before you're going to retire, typically you can afford to be more aggressive the longer you are before you're going to need to be able to use that money. So if you keep that money just setting in something that's earning 1% or a fixed rate or whatever for that certain time period, it really hinders the compound growth that you can get setting you up for retirement.
Wow. Okay. Excellent points. Thank you so much. Eric, this next one I'm going to guide to you. What about someone not having a plan? What if they think they can just do it themselves and they don't need to have a plan in place?
Well, we see a lot. Well, I've gotten X amount of return over the last couple of years. I'm doing pretty good on my own. Fantastic. Good for you. And that's great. Everyone's done well on their own over the last decade. We've had the greatest 10-year run in the stock market, in the stock market's entire history.
Yeah.
You could pretty much throw darts and pick stocks, and you've done pretty well over the last decade, to be perfectly blunt. That's not a plan. To keep doing the same things that you've been doing, that will not continue to be what you need to do going forward. You need to we call it planning for a reason.
Sure.
It's not just coming up with a plan, it's going through the planning process and adjusting that plan on an annual basis. Are you planning for taxes? Because most people think specifically about investments or what the return is in the stock market. Well, what's your tax planning look like? What types of accounts are you contributing and growing to? Do you have different accounts with different tax liabilities? Because typically you want to build up different accounts in conjunction with one another. You don't want to put all your eggs into just like your 401k basket, for example.
Sure.
So are you properly allocating to different accounts? Are you properly allocating risk? How does this fit into what your goals and what your time horizons look like? All these different things fit into a plan, as opposed to just what most people think right off the top is, well, I'm getting a decent return on my investments. Okay, once again, that's fantastic. But there needs to be a level beyond that you need to prepare for, especially when you're planning to thrive and live in retirement. You can't just keep winging it.
Right.
And we find that there are people that, like Eric said, just keep their investments like that, then do it themselves or whatnot. But they also, in the back of their mind, they don't feel like they need a plan because they kind of rely on Social Security being their income replacement and retirement. And what we've come to find out is really a lot of retirees that we work with, Social Security is making up around 40% of their retirement income. So if you wait till later on in your life and you realize, oh geez, I'm 55, I want to retire at 60, and I'm finding out that my Social Security projections and my income is not where it needs to be, and now I need to start saving. Yes, you can make catch-up contributions, you can start doing things like that, but the biggest value that everyone really has, and we just don't know how much we have of it, is time.
Yeah.
So the earlier you can start saving, even if it's just a little bit of money, putting it away, the time component is the variable, and that's really the most important piece of what we are, what the compounding growth is on these people's retirement accounts are.
That makes perfect sense. Aaron, thank you so much. Eric, I know that you and Aaron have a very special offer for the viewers at home. Let's talk about what that is before we reopen the phones.
Absolutely. So let's take that a step farther. Do you have a plan in place? We're talking about one of the biggest DIY mistakes that we see is individual investors that don't have a plan. Do you have a plan? Or have you reviewed your plan in the last year? If the answer to either one of those questions is no, give us a call. Pick up the phone, 844-900-5210. That's the hardest thing you're going to do through this whole process, quite frankly, because after that, we're going to get you into our offices. We're going to sit down, we'll have a cup of coffee together, and we will go through what your current plan looks like, if you have one, and if there's any adjustments that we might be able to make on the, on the ends to really best optimize your retirement plan and put those puzzle pieces together so you truly understand what your retirement roadmap looks like.
Eric, thank you so much. Aaron, thank you so much. To the viewers at home, the phone number to call is on your screen. That number is 844-900-5210. Don't miss this opportunity to put the pieces of your money puzzle together. Again, the number is 844-900-5210. We're going to take a very short commercial break, but don't go anywhere. I have a few more do-it-yourself mistakes that you're going to want to listen to. Stay tuned.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
And welcome back to the Money Puzzle. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Douglas and Aaron McAndrew of Family Wealth Planning Partners. A wonderful show we're having today, talking about the importance of putting those pieces in place of the money puzzle and some mistakes you can do when you're trying to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. So Aaron, I'm going to guide this next one to you. This is a great one as well. Let's talk a little bit about this. What about not saving enough to different accounts, Aaron?
This is an issue that typically, or a mistake that typically we see quite often, unfortunately. A lot of people are just trained, hey, we want to save money, put it into your retirement account, throw it in your 401k, max out everything, put everything into that 401k plan, or wherever you're getting the match at, a 403b, whatever that account might be. And unfortunately, they save pre-tax. All those dollars are saved pre-tax, so it goes into a tax or a pre-tax account. When you get to retirement, all that money eventually is going to be taxable. Well, that creates an issue on a couple of fronts. One, you're not diversified at all on the type of accounts that you have saved in. 100% of your retirement savings is going to be taxable. Two, when you have to start taking money out, when you have required minimum distributions and you have to start taking money out at age 72, all of that, it's going to create a tax bomb. So what could happen is they're going to force you to take that money out at 72. You're already drawing Social Security. It could be more money than what you need to live off of, and you're having to pay extra taxes on that money. So wow. It could be a big tax issue there. We've always heard we need to be diversified. So diversify your investments, right? But also diversify the types of accounts that you're saving in. So are we saving in tax-free accounts like Roth IRA? Non-qualified accounts, because I had a client that did just this, saved all of her money into a retirement account, but decided at 55 we were going to retire. Company was offering a buyout in terms of her pension. At 55 she was going to retire, took early retirement. Well, all of that money is taxable. So if you're saving in non-qualified money at that point in time, you can pull that money out. You can get to that money without the 10% early withdrawal penalty, and then that money is obviously taxed different. Roth IRAs the same way. That money goes in, you've already paid taxes on it. It grows tax-free. When you take money out in retirement, you can pull that money out. You're not taxed on it. So, so it's not just important to just diversify your investments, but also diversify the different types of accounts you're contributing to for retirement.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you so much, Aaron. Eric, this next one is for you. I'm going to take it over to you. Taking advice from friends and family. Why can that be a risk for doing it yourself?
Well, are your friends and family qualified to give advice in the first place is a big question. We see this a lot with Social Security. Well, I filed at Social Security. I filed for Social Security at X age, and that's what you should do too. Well, that might not be appropriate for you. Yeah. Or let's say someone who has $1 million portfolio giving advice to someone with a $300,000 portfolio. You aren't the same. Maybe that person can afford to take more risk or do different types of things that are not appropriate for you. your advice needs to be tailored to you specifically. And the problem with most advice that you've received from friends and family is that talking about what worked for them. That's not something that's going to be tailored for you. You need advice that's tailored to your specific situation. You don't need to hear about what worked best for your neighbor or your friend. That doesn't matter. And quite frankly, you usually what you also hear about you usually hear about the highlights, right?
Yeah,
You
only
hear,
the good stuff,
I invested in Amazon at the bottom, and now it's the biggest company in the world, right? Well, okay, great. Well, Amazon's already the biggest company in the world. It's probably not the best time to start that strategy.
Yeah.
So you need to do something different that's going to be applicable for you. So really, that's why it's most important to focus on yourself and not try to hear about what worked for everyone else, because that's not going to be necessarily what works best for you.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. So Aaron, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation when it comes down to designing someone's money puzzle.
No, absolutely not. It's tailored. It's a tailored plan. Obviously, somebody's going to come into me with a whole, different types of accounts. Somebody has saved into different types of accounts we were talking about, and then there's other people that come in and all they have is the retirement account that's there, so all the money's there. So we've got to be a little bit more creative as to how they're going to be able to get that income in retirement, or if they're not at retirement, how are they going to be saving to be able to set themselves up to have a successful retirement.
Because that's really what it comes down to, having peace of mind and success in retirement. Eric, with about 1 minute and 40 seconds left of the show this week, I know you have final words of wisdom and advice that you want to give the viewers at home. So let's take a few moments to do that.
No, absolutely, yeah. So the theme of this show has been mistakes that we see investors make on their own, going it alone. Maybe you've done that before. Have you been doing that? Do you have a plan in place? Have any of these mistakes applied to anything that maybe you've done in the past? The worst thing you can do going forward is to let previous mistakes compound upon themselves and become worse. The hardest thing you can do right now is to actually pick up the phone and make the call. That's the hardest part of this entire process, is to get the ball rolling and putting together the pieces of your puzzle and start going through the planning process. Give us a call. Pick up the phone, 844-900-5210.
And Eric, it's a living, breathing organism, if you will, so it's going to change and adjust to people as they go through different life changes,
Constantly.
Correct?
Constantly.
So it's not a set it and a forget it situation.
We don't give you a plan and give you a pat on the back on the way out the door and say good luck. It's a constant process, and it's always evolving.
Eric, thank you so much. Aaron, thank you so much. To the viewers at home, most specifically, we'd like to thank you for spending time with us today. That number is 844-900-5210. We know you have a lot of questions about the pieces that are in your money puzzle. Don't miss the opportunity to call in today, 844-900-5210. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to seeing you back here 1 week from today.